Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to today's webinar on active transportation return on investment. My name is Michelle Lieberman. I'm the Technical Assistance Manager at the Safe Routes to School National Partnership. I know some of you are past viewers of our National Partnership webinars who join us regularly, and some of you may be joining us for the first time. Either way, we're really glad that you could join us today. We're going to do something a little bit different from our usual National Partnership webinars today. We're happy to have with us our partners from Southern California, the Alliance for a Healthy Orange County, and they have put together a really great lineup of speakers on a topic that I think is of really broad interest. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Cousins with the Alliance for a Healthy Orange County, who will be moderating today's webinar. Take it away, Rebecca.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for joining. AHOC is proud to present this webinar on the return on investment of active transportation infrastructure. Before we get started, we're going to point out a few housekeeping items, and I'm going to explain a little bit about my organization, Alliance for a Healthy Orange County, or AHOC. There we go. The Alliance for a Healthy Orange County is a county-wide coalition of healthcare organizations, community-based organizations, and universities whose mission it is to champion policy strategies and leverage funding opportunities that result in enhanced health outcomes and reduced health disparities for Orange County residents. And now onto a few housekeeping items. So to the left is the GoToWebinar viewer through which you can see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can raise your hand, ask questions, and select audio mode. Please note that the attendee control panel will collapse automatically when not in use. To keep it open, you can click the View menu and uncheck Auto Hide Control Panel. You have two options for listening to us today, telephone and mic speakers. If you have sound problems with one selection, then try the other option. If you're still having difficulties, just comment to us in the questions box and we'll do our best to field any issues after you send us the message. Even though you're muted, we do want to hear your input. So use the question box to ask speaker questions for the Q&A portion of the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer all of those questions. Throughout the webinar, we're going to be having a question and answer portion after each presentation. So make sure you're sending in those questions, and then we'll have so 5 minutes for questions after each presenter, and then 10 minutes for questions at the end. And then after today's presentation, if you guys want to come back and reference this, there's going to be a lot of great information, or if you want to share it with a colleague, then you'll be able to go to the OC Health Alliance website, and you'll be able to go to the Resources tab and then look under the Resources for Download section. Safe Routes to School will also be posting this webinar, so if you go to their resources header and then click on their webinar in the left-hand menu, then you'll be able to access the recording there as well. So today's speakers are Charlie Gandy, Jessica Meany, and Matt Norris. Charlie Gandy is a recognized expert in community design, trail planning and design, and bicycle and pedestrian advocacy. Since 1998, when Gandy started his current consulting practice, he has worked with government agencies, community organizations, becoming a popular speaker and lecturer, and is often enlisted by design firms for his expertise in livability leadership and design issues. Jessica Meany is the Executive Director of the nonprofit Investing in Place with over 10 years of professional experience in transportation policy in Southern California. She is a committed transportation advocate who has been living intentionally car-free in Los Angeles for close to 17 years. Academically trained as a sociologist, Jessica's approach to transportation policy began with looking at the key roles public transit, walking and bicycle play, and social cohesion and community health. Over the years, her interest has grown into addressing the user experience and advocating for those traveling without access to a car. Jessica's policy approach is focused on using transportation, finance resource, and advocacy efforts to achieve those outcomes. Matthew Norris supports the Building Healthy Places initiative and works on projects linking health, sustainability, and development. He previously worked at the Tri-State Transportation Campaign, where he focused on improving access to safe, reliable, and equitable modes of transportation throughout southern New Jersey and the greater Philadelphia area. Matt earned his master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University, New Brunswick in 2010, where he focused on international development and comprehensive planning. Matt also holds a BA in sociology from the University of Kansas. And to get us started is Matt Norris. Matt, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca. Just one moment while I pull up the slides here. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Matt Norris, Senior Associate for Content at the Urban Land Institute, and also I was one of the lead authors of ULI's report, Active Transportation and Real Estate, The Next Frontier, which I'll be detailing information from that report today. So just a little bit of background for those of you who may not know. The Urban Land Institute is a nonprofit research and education organization committed to leadership and the responsible use of land and in creating and sustaining thriving communities worldwide. And I'm very excited to be here today to provide some background, broad trends, and national examples of what we've learned so far through our work in active transportation and its returns on investment. Our active transportation work is part of our Building Healthy Places initiative. The initiative was launched in 2013 to leverage the power of ULI's global networks to shape places and projects in health-promoting ways. And also just like to thank the Colorado Health Foundation and Randall Lewis for the support of our active transportation work and Building Healthy Places in general. So as we begin, I think it's useful to just quickly take a step back and to consider ways that the built environment affects health. We know that according to the Centers for Disease Control, 60% of adults in the United States do not engage in the recommended amount of physical activity. And the figure of adults that don't engage in the recommended amount of physical activity, actually that don't engage in physical activity at all is nearly a quarter of the country. Furthermore, about 1 in 3 children in the United States is considered to be overweight or obese. Clearly, there are a multitude of factors that contribute to these statistics, but the built environment has implications for whether people have opportunities to engage in physical activity, and also has implications in terms of pedestrian injuries, asthma, mental health, and the list goes on. We also know that places that accommodate walking and bicycling tend to promote physical health. The Journal of American Preventive Medicine has found that people that live in neighborhoods that have walkable retail or shops nearby are 35% less likely to be at risk of obesity. But our communities, which were once designed around walking and bicycling, where walking and bicycling was the norm, we now see that physical activity has all but been designed out of our daily lives. Walking and bicycling on corridors and streets throughout the country is often inconvenient, dangerous, unpleasant, and in some cases even impossible. Streets that lack sidewalks, bike lanes, nearby trails also contribute to social inequality, as people that may lack access to a motor vehicle are forced to walk on roads that aren't safe to be walking or bicycling on. These types of corridors and streets that are hostile to walking and bicycling also tend to attract less investment and are therefore less economically successful places. But people are increasingly demanding places to walk and bike throughout the country. Designing places and streets for people supports better health outcomes and also the creation of vibrant, successful places that people love to come back to time and time again. So what trends are contributing to this increasing demand for places that accommodate walking and bicycling? Well, we see from the census that bicycling is the fastest growing form of transportation in the United States for commuters. And then ULI's research in a report called America in 2015 found that 50% of residents in the United States say that walkability is a top or high priority when considering where to live. And along those same lines, 50% of people in the United States wish and desire more bike lanes in their communities as well. So these trends and this growing demand for walkability and bikeability has implications for real estate, for returns on investment, and for the provision of facilities that accommodate walking and bicycling. ULI wanted to look a little bit more deeply about these trends and to examine how real estate developers are leveraging the demand in active transportation and also investments by the public sector to build projects nearby active transportation routes that leverage their development but also provide features to accommodate walking and bicycling within the buildings themselves. We also looked in our report, Active Transportation and Real Estate, the Next Frontier, at public sector investments in active transportation and how these can promote health, social equity, and sustainability. And the report also details 5 international catalytic active transportation investment projects primarily by the public sector and 10 private sector development projects that are what we're referring to as trail-oriented development projects. So it's clear from our research that active transportation infrastructure is beginning to drive nearby development. And I think one great example of this is Minneapolis's Midtown Greenway. The Midtown Greenway is a 5.5-mile commuter trail in Minneapolis that connects the Midtown and Uptown neighborhoods of that city, and it was built in stages between 2000 and 2007. Since the Midtown Greenway was completed, there has been over $750 million of adjacent real estate development directly alongside the trail, and this includes at least 11 separate development projects. Real estate values and land values adjacent to the trail have shot up 90%. But what I think is equally interesting is of the 11 separate projects that have been built by the Midtown Greenway, it's been a true mix of retail, mixed-use projects, office developments, and also residential development. And the residential development has been a mix of market rate, mixed-use, and affordable housing. One of the projects in Minneapolis directly adjacent to the Midtown Greenway is called Mosaic. And this is a particularly notable project because Mosaic was built, was actually planned during the Great Recession and opened in 2012. And this is an office building that was built in Minneapolis's Uptown neighborhood, which is a very vibrant and successful neighborhood in many ways, but was not a place traditionally known for office development. So it was a bit of a gamble. But the developer, the Ackerberg Group, saw the potential of being located directly adjacent to the Midtown Greenway and felt that potential building tenants and workers for the offices in the building would be attracted to the trail. There was only one problem, though. As you may be able to see in the picture, the Midtown Greenway is completely grade separated, and at that time, this part of Uptown didn't have a ramp or bridge that connected to the trail. So the Ackerberg Group partnered with the local county, Hennepin County, and also the developer of another project adjacent to the trail to fund the construction of a $370,000 bicycle pedestrian bridge and ramp. And that public-private partnership led to increased access to the Midtown Greenway for not only for the residents of the building, for the tenants of the building, but also for residents and visitors to the nearby area. I also just wanted to quickly touch on another project that we highlighted in the report called Silver Moon Lodge. Silver Moon Lodge is an affordable housing development in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with 154 units that was built adjacent to nearby bike lanes and also the city's growing bikeway network. And this is just adjacent to the downtown of Albuquerque as well. The project includes bicycle storage for residents, a room where residents can complete bicycle repairs and use tools freely, and also a resident bike share program. But perhaps the most interesting part of the project is that it includes only one car parking space for every 6 residential units. But the developers have reported that this has not been an issue whatsoever, and in fact, sometimes the parking lot is not even at full, even though there's only one space for every 6 units. And this is largely due to the project's location and the fact that its residents can rely on biking to get around. I think this offers a great lesson of a project that was able to reduce the cost of development by providing less car parking, making it more affordable and helping to increase the ability of developers to focus on affordable housing in the area. So I'm running up against time here, so I'm just going to put a slide up that goes through some of the lessons learned through our research and through the Active Transportation Project. And I'll leave this up here, and happy to take your questions. So we have about 5 minutes for questions now, and we'll also have some more time at the end.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Matt. Those are some great examples. One of the first questions that we have is asking about what the initial investment costs are for a city that wants to build out their active transportation infrastructure.
Sure. I think it certainly depends on what the infrastructure is, whether it's bike lanes or trails or sidewalks. It's completely different in every case, but one thing that's for sure is that the cost of developing active transportation infrastructure is extremely low compared to the cost of building, roads for cars. And I think some of our research also pointed out that some of the most effective ways of increasing the scope of active transportation networks throughout the country focused on partnerships with developers in the private sector. Another project that we highlighted in the report is called the Circuit, which is a planned 750-mile network of trails throughout a nine-county region around Philadelphia. And a number of trails that are part of that network have been directly funded by developers of projects that saw the value of building near those trails. And so they've actually provided greater access for people throughout the region by making those investments.
Great. So second question, what talking points do you use when you first bring up a new project, like the ones you've discussed with city planners and legislator? And I'm guessing this is maybe from the perspective of a community member or as a community member.
So I think, one of the things that I think was, somewhat new about our research and our work here at ULI was looking at how trails and bike lanes and active transportation infrastructure and things like bike share systems, it has helped to catalyze nearby development, but also that there's a reciprocal relationship between this private sector development and the active transportation infrastructure itself. So I think one of the most effective talking points really lies on the fact that these investments are really great for economic development. They're also great for for health and for accommodating walking and bicycling in people's daily lives, and they also help promote social equity and help to reduce pedestrian and bicyclist injuries. So we really run the gamut of talking points, depending on the audience. But I think depending on who you're speaking to, especially speaking to public officials or community members focused on economic development, I think some of the statistics around how active transportation investments promote and can support nearby development, but how that development can then go on to support future investments in the active transportation itself. I think those are some of the most powerful talking points.
Great. Thank you so much. And now we are going to move on to our next presenter, Jessica Meany.
Awesome, thanks. Hey everyone. My name is Jessica Meany. Does everything look okay on the screen? Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks. Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Jessica Meany. I am calling from Los Angeles. Wanted to share a little bit of a story on what we've done here in Los Angeles County to increase investments for sidewalks, crosswalks, bicycle lanes, and safe routes to school. Also want to give a shout out. A lot of my work was generated when I worked for the Safe Routes to School National Partnership as a policy organizer. So it's really nice to be here today. Let me go to the next slide. Sorry. So Investing in Place, we're a small nonprofit. We have about 3 full-time staff right now. We focus our strategies on pulling people together, diverse groups. We do convenings. We work directly with elected officials and their staff. We work a lot closely with public agencies. We do a lot of advocacy. And really our focus is how do we make Los Angeles County a better place to travel and to get to school and to get to work and to get to family, especially for those without access to a car. So our key problem that we've really been trying to address is kind of wrapped up in many of these statistics. The one in the middle is the one that I've been really passionate about for several years, is for so long Los Angeles County has been investing less than 1% of all of our public tax dollars on making it safe to walk and bike and catch the bus. And you can see from those statistics, as a result of that lack of investment, we literally pay for it with our lives. 39% of all the roadway deaths in LA County have been people walking and biking. This number spikes to almost 50% in the city of Los Angeles. So really tremendous safety needs, and this disproportionately impacts low-income communities, communities of color, and some of the best research I've seen about this issue actually is based on Orange County data too, that the University of California, Irvine has done. But these are kind of some of our key statistics that started a frame we've been working on in Los Angeles County for about, I want to say 5 years, to really change this around, to really increase the investments to make it safe to walk and bike. So a little bit of how we did it. So it's, you know, it's crazy. I'll just be really forthright. It is not normal to have 40% of the roadway deaths be people walking and biking. LA County, we're highly urbanized, lots of exposure and things like that, but that's just absolutely not acceptable, and it shouldn't be how our transportation network works. So when we set about trying to increase funding for active transportation, for sidewalks or crosswalks, for safe routes to schools and bicycle lanes, we really had to focus on who had the power to program the dollars. So this kind of came about for me personally when I became really frustrated in hearing how great it is to ride the bus, how great it is to walk, how great it is to bicycle by many policymakers. But the experience I've been having for the past 20 years living in LA without a car really did not reflect what I was seeing in those pictures and the talking points from electeds. So to change this, we really set about understanding who was our decision maker. So you can see from the screen it's pretty complicated. We have the state who makes influences and allocates dollars. We have our regional MPO that does. Where you see those 3 stars is where Investing in Place has really zeroed in. Los Angeles County Metro, they're our County Transportation Commission. They guide 9. LA County is so ginormous, 10 million people live here. We break up into 9 subregions. They're called councils of government that bring cities together. And then the city of LA is really important to us because that represents 40% of the county. It's a big chunk of people that are impacted by these decisions. The reason we focus on county policy, I think it's really different depending on where you are in the country, on where your transportation money comes from. But for us in Los Angeles County, LA Metro programs about 70% of all the transportation dollars. What I mean by that is we've chosen as a county to tax ourselves because we see the need is so great that the state and federal funding was not adequate. So we have 3 existing sales taxes that fund transportation, and last fall we passed our 4th one. So here's some images of our region. I think that many people will likely relate to this. That first one in the corner is where some residents actually put shade up themselves because the bus stop was so exposed. Our sidewalks are really terrible. things like that. So we've been working on this for a while, and what we're really excited about is, as I mentioned, in November 2016, so 6 months ago, Los Angeles County passed its 4th transportation sales tax called Measure M. Why we think this is a huge deal is the previous sales taxes allocated a big fat zero to complete streets, to sidewalks, to crosswalks, to safe routes to school. Measure M is dedicating, Measure M, we changed that due to our advocacy and our organizing, our work with all sorts of partners. We now see Measure M, which dedicates 6 to 8% in the next 50 years to active transportation. It's roughly about $4 to $5 billion. I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about how we made this, what I consider to be an extraordinary win of really shifting transportation dollars to be truly multimodal. Here's some of the numbers that are 9 subregions. You can see some really great stuff for safe routes to schools, some really great stuff for first and last mile, for greenways, all sorts of things, so that they're catered towards those subregions and what those local cities were prioritizing. So really what I wanted to kind of share with you is how we did this. What were some of our tools? And again, real talk, we've been at this probably since 2010, 2011, so it's been a multi-year campaign and really a slow build to get to these types of dollars. But we really started, I don't know if this is when I was the national partnership, but we really started doing research, our own research from the advocacy side. So lots of times you'll be in public agency meetings and they will only talk about commute data. That's really unfortunate. The average person makes 4 to 6 trips a day. Women, head of households, moms being on the higher end of it. So investing in place, safe routes to school, several of our partners, we actually did our own research, hired a statistician. And if you can see on the far right side in Los Angeles County, 17% of our trips are made on foot. So everybody likes to talk about this song, Nobody Walks in LA, but if you actually do the work and you look at the data, couldn't be farther from the truth. So starting from kind of moving from anecdotes to data has been really important for us. Sorry, I'm having trouble. Another thing for me, this is when I was back in the day at the Safe Routes to School National Partnership. We again hired a statistician and did our own research and found that in Los Angeles County, 32% of our students were walking to school, radically different from the national numbers of 10%. So really looking at our own region, our own data, and bringing that to our policymakers has been critical for us. So for me, when we talk about increasing funding, regrettably in Southern California, and I would imagine in other regions, there was really no price tag on what we were talking about. What was a win? What was the need? And really inspired by some of the campaigns that say, we need X amount of dollars to make our bridges safe. We need X amount of money to make our roads work. We took on that same approach because, in my experience, you can't get the funding from public agencies and tax dollars unless you actually have a list of what you're going to do with it and what are the costs we're talking about. So this chart you're looking at is something that we generated from the advocacy side on what would it take to make Los Angeles County a walkable and bikeable region. That's $19 billion. So we didn't get close to that in Measure M, but now we really have a target and we really know where we're headed. Another big tool for us has been organizing, bringing cross sectors together, and we spend a lot of our time communicating Twitter, Instagram, blogs, conference calls, but we prioritize every quarter. We have large convenings where we bring together people from public agencies, elected officials, advocacy groups, funders, and business developers. So really trying to create a mix-up and break down those silos. We've also invested a little bit, thanks to American Heart Association, in spokesperson training. So diversifying the bench of messengers and who speaks out. And then really the most important thing from my perspective, in order to increase funding, you really need the plans, you really need the project list. So this is a list of things that, this is how we got to a ballot measure that could dedicate 6 to 8% of funding. We didn't show up at the last 6 months, but we've been doing years of work of here's the policy, here's the project list. We've also, we're lucky enough to do some polling. Matt talked a little bit about this. Sidewalks poll incredibly high for what residents want to see improved in Los Angeles County. And then we really focused on building unlikely partnerships, getting out of our silos of just talking to our fellow advocates and community-based organizations who we really agree with, and reaching across the aisle to build relationships with developers, business thinkers, public agency staff, and more. And then this is some serious work, and it does take many years, so we do like to have fun, and we really have to celebrate each step of the way. Some of the things that I've learned over the years that we're working on now is, while it was wonderful to pass the ballot measure, the work actually started after the voters said yes. This is a picture of Metro's newly formed Policy Advisory Council that is a mixture of all those many sectors I was talking about that will write kind of the guidelines on how we spend these dollars. Also big for us in Los Angeles County is equity. People who are on the bus predominantly are Black, Brown, API, they're people of color, and they tend to have incomes under $20,000, $15,000 a year. So they're really poor. Our mobility issues in Los Angeles County and the ability to travel and access and get there safely completely fall around income and racial lines. So we are looking to have a real definition at the census tract, at what they call the UZA level, of what we're talking about in our high need areas in Los Angeles County. So we can move from just dividing transportation public tax dollars by population, but start really targeting need. Also, what's really important for us is Los Angeles region is in the middle of a housing crisis. So now as transportation advocates, it's incredibly important that as all these Measure M investments go in, improve the infrastructure and make things better, that those investments are for long-term residents, and we're not doing development with displacement, but we're actually lifting up all boats and making sure that we're not building a city just for the rich, but we have a city that's mixed incomes, mixed all sorts of things, and it's for everyone's benefit, especially those who've been there a long time. So that's about it for me, and thanks for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. I think we have time for a couple of questions. The first one, are pedestrian improvements required for new construction projects in LA County?
I think so. I really don't know the answer to that question. I think it varies by city and by developer agreement. There usually is an impact statement of the traffic that is caused by a new development, which requires transportation improvements. That can take many forms of investments, either bike parking, new signals, new crosswalks, but I don't think there's one easy answer I would say to that question. Maybe other people on the panel might know.
Okay, great, thank you. And then second question, why do you think there's such a major discrepancy between national walking and biking data and locally collected and analyzed surveys?
I think when you look at national average statistics, it just blends the highs and the lows, and it's hard to find meaning. I think if you are in a region or in a state where you aren't lucky enough to have county revenue and you rely on the state and federal funding, that makes sense to use those types of numbers. But for us in Los Angeles County, when we went to our County Transportation Commission, using national numbers didn't resonate with them. They really wanted to know what was happening in their own region, what they were directly responsible for. And so I think I can't say enough how important it is to actually do some digging and find complete data for all trips, particularly for youth, because they are underreported and many of what transportation agencies are using to prioritize projects.
Wonderful, and I'll make a comment on my experience in Orange County that the data that has also resonated the most with our local city staff and policymakers has been data that pertains to their community members. I think you're right when it's so high level that it's easy to ignore if they're not already bought into the importance of active transportation infrastructure.
Yeah. No, I would totally agree, Rebecca. I mean, one of the reasons we place a heavy emphasis on communications and spokesperson training is using, while it's really important and valuable in some places to use examples from other cities and other states, doesn't really fly too many settings to say, oh, this other city way up north or this other city back east. Here in Los Angeles County, and I would imagine in everywhere, there's a real respect and pride in who we are and how we're different. And so cultivating voices and experiences and data from the very community you're trying to impact is incredibly important.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think right now we will move to Charlie Gandy from for the third presentation.
Hi, this is Charlie Gandy. Can you validate that I'm being heard?
Yes, we can hear you, Charlie. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I'm here to share with you, first of all, that I know something about the place you live. You live in one of these types of cities. There's only 3 of them, and they all start with a B. The first is a bellwether city. You live in Portland or Austin or someplace that is fearless in innovation. Maybe you live in a bandwagon city, a city that envies those kinds of cities and wants to move in that direction. Or maybe you live in a backwater city, a city that looks at all that and says, oh, that's not for us. That would be change, and that's not for us. Bellwether, bandwagon, or backwater. You live in one of those 3 cities. And so here I am. I'm Charlie Gandy. I'm a consultant that works in bandwagon and bellwether cities. I'm okay for, and we can go into the joys of backwater places, but that's not where I get to spend my time and share my talent and resources. And today I want to share with you the role of political leadership in setting up some amazing things that can happen for a community. I want to talk about professionals and their role in that. And I want to show you 2 different projects that we've completed in Long Beach that are hitting on all the points that have been said by the previous presenters and shows the power of innovation. So first of all, these 2 people in the photograph here, the fellow on our left is the current mayor of Long Beach. He's an immigrant from Peru and not much of a bicyclist, but really does understand how bicycling fits into the narrative of Long Beach, what we want Long Beach to be seen as. The woman to his left, our right, is Suja Lowenthal. Suja has retired from the city council now, but in 2007, she was the catalyst to start Long Beach's narrative of a great bike city. And she, as an immigrant from India, understood, and both of these people being immigrants, being from outside, coming in with some interesting new ideas and ways of looking at their adopted city, were the catalyst for the change that occurred. And by the way, immediately over Suja's shoulder, that guy with the white hair, that's me. And metaphorically, that's the role I get to play in this, is coaching professionals and political leaders to take some risks, some political and investment risks in an effort to distinguish themselves from other places. So this is Suja and Robert. They recognize the power of beauty and the power of innovation in a place such as Long Beach, California. What they did was empower the professionals in Long Beach to go break down some silos that existed here and that I'm sure exist in your place. And that is where the city engineer has absolute control over the streets, and his only duty and responsibility is the free flow of automobiles unimpeded. And then you have the business community and the neighborhood association and others that see that space more blended. And so the professional's role is to break down, is to take Suja and Robert's leadership and political will and translate that into something that is powerful for the community and get past those power bases that impede progress. And then there's another role. So we political leadership, professional leadership. Then there's advocates, and their role is to lead with beauty and blending of that public space, slowing down cars so that that's not the only dominant activity that occurs along that public way. That public way might serve us better if we slow down the cars, we reallocate the space, and provide then opportunities for adjacent businesses to thrive and people that live adjacent to that to thrive. And so the people such as this, these 2 bike advocates for the Broadway and 3rd protected bike lanes in downtown Long Beach are examples of the change in the conversation that's occurring, at least on the West Coast and in other progressive places. Long Beach is in a bellwether role in adopting this notion that bike lanes don't go far enough. If you want to attract people who are the 60% of the interested but concerned crowd in the biking community, women like this, you need to separate them from fast-moving cars. That is, in the last decade, a lesson that we've learned in the United States, and this type of facility is what's next. And these types of people are who we're designing for. Back to the left, that's Suja Lowenthal. She is, she was really the visionary, political leader that made this happen. And I can't emphasize enough her role and the women's role in this conversation that has put Long Beach on the bleeding edge of bike-friendly communities around the country, which is our agenda, by the way. Suja and Robert and the rest of the City Council have embraced the notion of Long Beach becoming one of the best bike cities in the nation because it's in our DNA. We're a great place to ride a bike, and so why not emphasize that and reap the rewards that come from it? That's the fresh conversation that we're having here. We're still thinking about kids. We're still thinking about families getting to and from the beach, and these protected bike lanes work better for them, of course, than standard bike lanes or no bike lanes at all. And we don't forget our adult males that are forlorn, single riders in a happy place versus mixing it up with cars. So Long Beach has taken some risks and done some innovation on Broadway and 3rd. This is the story of that corridor today. We did protected bike lanes there, about 3 miles total, with bike intersections and so forth. We did it. It was the first protected bike lanes in Southern California, or in California, and has proven to be not just a great transportation route and a great way to reallocate the space, and a great way to slow down the cars that were moving through there. This section used to be known as the highway to highway. It used to be 3-car travel lanes in each direction, and it was one of the reasons why there was no activity along this route. Cut to the chase in this photograph, the company that's in here now is 130 architects. It's the biggest firm in Long Beach. They moved out of their 19th-story floor on Ocean Boulevard to this place because they wanted to be in this community. They wanted to be in the sort of place that is being changed by a rethink of the transportation system there. And so they're the most progressive architectural firm in the city and one of the best in California. And they understand and they are embracing this active living narrative because it looks good on them and it's part of their future and their employees' future. So within that context of innovation, the other one I want to share with you is how we've taken that notion of beauty and blending and applied it to the sidewalks. Here's an example of where you're probably familiar with what a parklet is, which is taking a parking space, a parallel parking space, and turning that into public space, usually a sitting area. The Streetdecks is an extension of that concept, except in this case we're using the adjacent business owner's money to do this and extending the sidewalk out into that parking space and allowing then that business to grow in place and creating some street activity and doing a bunch of other things that are very positive for both the city of Long Beach and these business owners. So I've written reports about this, and we've talked about 30% growth, and I'll move on from that. But this is Lola's. This is the first one we put in the photograph. It was done with $25,000 of their money, and because of the innovation, because they were the first mover on that, they noticed the best growth. They got TV commercials were filmed there, and they got their 25 grand back within the year. But more importantly, they converted those 2-car parking spaces into a roughly 30% more space to serve customers and created a party on the street, and it became instead of 2 SUVs parked in front of Lola's, the party was parked there. And so, by the way, we have a policy in Long Beach of having 0 net loss of parking. And so we always, the 2-car parking spaces that were here, we found within a block away to mitigate that so that we can step by that question. So this is what Streetdecks are about. We've done now, I believe, 8 or 9 in Long Beach. These are, again, all business owners that are expanding their space out, and we're rethinking the value of that space on these attractive business corridors and discovering that it's a smart reuse of the space. In the upper right-hand corner, to close this out, that's where we incorporated a bioswale into that street deck project, and that we had a $50,000 water recycling grant that paid for that. And so the notion of building in these street decks into other projects is the point I want to make there. And the street deck model down on the bottom left, that's from Carlsbad, California. That's an easy thing to do, and I'll work with anybody who wants to more information on that. That's all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Charlie. And I myself have been able to go on a bike tour in Long Beach, and it was really fun, and I felt really safe the whole time. So I know you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that the main part of your work has happened within Long Beach and the cities. Are you aware of any suburban cities or maybe places in unincorporated areas who've tried to incorporate more cohesive biking infrastructure or parklets or street decks, just for our listeners to reference?
Off the top of my head, no, but I can tell you that Long Beach is not a major metropolitan area. With the exception of that protected bike lane, and People for Bikes has done a good job. If you're looking for more information on protected bike lanes, go to the People for Bikes website, and they tell the story very well there and how they're being incorporated in lots of different areas. And in fact, suburban areas are the best places for that kind of facility. One, you have, generally speaking, wider roads and slower residential streets, and so that you can, if you choose to, you can accommodate those kids riding their bikes to school. It may cost you some amount of parking, or you may need to rearrange the parking, but you can make that a priority if you choose to. And so, and then street decks are any place that you have too narrow a sidewalk, or you want to try to keep that business from moving. See, that was the key impetus for us, for the city, is that if a great restaurant outgrows its space, then it has to start looking around for more. All of these restaurants were dynamic places that had outgrown their space and were going to have to move, and they ran the risk of those businesses moving out of town. And so by us being innovative and doing these pilot projects cooperatively, we not only kept those businesses in place, but and we've created a revenue stream that they didn't have before. They've all hired at least 6 new employees. You know, it's a good sales, it's a good story, and rethink of the public space.
That's great. And then one other question was, has there been any special permitting, or is there any special permitting that the city would have to do to create the street decks or parklets?
I've got a report that I'll send out, or if there's a way to do that hits on that. But the baseline is we did all these as pilot projects, and we talked to the police and the fire and utilities and others as a professional team of people coming together to analyze the change. And based on the design of these street decks, we're not building anything permanent that can't be easily moved. So we haven't overthought it. It's been a pilot project. The city's in the process now of making it into an ongoing policy. And there are other facets of that we didn't have a chance to get into here today. But yeah, the key is it started as a pilot project and has proven effective, and now we're embracing it ongoing.
Wonderful. So I think we'll open the questions back up for all 3 of the presentations, and just from one of our questions that we weren't able to get to earlier. And Charlie, I think you might be a good person to start for this question as well. How do we sell people on the idea of using bikes over cars and shifting the norm?
You make it pretty, you make it beautiful, you make it attractive, and you make it safe. And so there's a lot of ways I can go with this, and I'm not going to hog all the time, but electric bikes are now making it attractive for people who live where there are hills, or for older people to get back on bikes. And so that technological improvement is creating an entirely new conversation about how to ride bikes. And cities such as Long Beach, by taking, this isn't rocket science. Once we have the political will to do a bike lane or a protected bike lane, then it's just following patterns that we've done hundreds of times in hundreds of other cities now related to protected bike lanes. And so it's deciding that we're going to do it is the most important thing.
Great. And Matt, what is your input on that and shifting the culture from using bikes over cars?
Sure. I mean, I would just reiterate something that I highlighted, briefly in my talk, that people that live, near some of these really high-quality bike facilities, trail networks, things of that nature, where they're actually using trails and separated bike lanes, to commute and to meet their daily needs, to go visit friends, to visit other recreational areas. People that live near those facilities are increasingly expecting to be able to own and maintain bicycles where they live. So the real estate projects that are going above and beyond, I mean, at a minimum, projects that are accommodating bicycles are including dedicated space to store bikes. But we're seeing more and more projects that are including bicycle workrooms. Sometimes, if it's an office building, showers for people to use after they've commuted. Other projects are including bike valet service or bike park and rides. So I think kind of this intersection between the public and private sector and the increasing focus on accommodating bicycles within buildings themselves, I think that's something that we're seeing that's supporting the shift from cars to bicycles. And then the other thing is just getting the mix of automobile parking versus bicycle parking right in projects. That's something that's pretty difficult across the country in a lot of places due to zoning laws. But we're seeing places where advocates and developers have successfully helped to change some of the zoning laws and reduce the provision of automobile parking, and that helps to support the provision of bike parking and other bike facilities within projects.
Great. And Jessica, I'm also interested to hear your input, especially since you live in a place like LA without a car.
Yeah, but what's the question there? I wasn't sure. For me, at least.
How do we convince the community, city planners, policymakers to emphasize bikes over cars, or even walking over cars?
Yeah, so the one that, I think what Charlie and Matt said are all right. I really think it depends on who you're working with and what your frame is. I think different messages just really tend to resonate with different people. I think, safety works with a lot of people, quality of life works with a lot of people. We actually, for investing in place, actually really shy away from even using the word after transportation anymore. And we talk a lot about options. Many people want choices and different ways to travel. Rarely does one person only use the bus, only drive, only bike, but they will sometimes drive to work. They'll sometimes bike to work. They'll sometimes take the metro to school. So our frame is really not even just getting more people to walk and bike, but getting more people to have mobility options than only feeling trapped to have to drive everywhere for every trip. That helps.
Great, thank you. And then for the next question, let's see here. One of the questions, this is for Jessica, how did you guys crunch all of those numbers, and did you guys get funding for that? What would it take for a city that wanted to start that project?
Yeah, so crunching the numbers on the mode split was pretty cheap for us. It was under $5,000. We relied on the National Household Travel Survey, and we had a statistician who was really smart, and we just did a small subcontract with her. Using National Household Travel Survey data is only really good at a county or regional level, which is really too bad. Most cities do not know how all trips and people travel, and we really should change that. So there's that. The hard part, I will be totally honest, is understanding your transportation budgets, where the money's coming from and where it's going, and making that, wrapping your head around that. That's tricky, and it takes some time. We focused a lot at the county level since that's the biggest funder in our issue area. City budgets can be tricky depending on how big your city is. It's totally doable, but what I really always want to be really honest about is every city and every region is very different, so you just kind of have to do the work. We did that ourselves, though. We hired a graduate student from a local university to do some of the digging for us, but in our advocacy group, we were able to do it ourselves, which was really exciting, but it took a minute.
Great, and as a follow-up to that, was the 17% of trips on foot a total of all trips or just commuting trips?
Total of all trips, yeah.
Great. Wonderful. So, and this one's probably a question for Matt. How do you encourage affordable housing development near active transit when it also at the same time increases the value of the land adjacent?
Sure, that's a great and very important question, as we know that low-income people are disproportionately affected by poor active transportation or infrastructure or the lack thereof. I think, again, and I've hit this a couple times, I think projects that are able to reduce the amount of automobile parking that they have to provide, that can lower the cost of development and can make it more feasible to invest in affordable housing. I think it really depends, though, on the local context and in terms of local laws on providing mixed income or affordable housing and whatever particular incentives are available to provide that. So I think, again, it really depends on the context, but anything that can help to reduce the cost associated with development, I think, is one way to help encourage affordable housing.
Great. And then for the projects that many of you discussed, are these projects open to also I know, Charlie, you mentioned motorized bikes, but maybe for the closed trails, are motorcycles and ATVs allowed on some of these closed trails, or are they specifically for non-motorized vehicles?
Related to electric bikes, California has created the template for the e-bike legislation and ranking them, and so they're identified in this place between traditional bikes and motorcycles. And in essence, if they're under 20 miles per hour, they can be used on multi-use trails and in bike lanes. And that's sort of the template model legislation being used around the country right now. And so in almost every case, yes, we're talking about e-bikes that being able to use these types of trails on road. Off-road, e-bikes are restricted to where motorized vehicles are allowed as a general rule in federal land across the country, and then there are local rules. So that, I think, answers your question.
Great, thank you. And then another question was, since many communities are facing shopping mall declines and abandonment, are you all aware of any examples of repurposing these spaces, maybe for placemaking, like outdoor parks, or expanding walking and biking facilities?
I will jump in. This is Charlie. I'll just jump in and say that I'm the old guy at this table. I was working around Detroit in the late 90s and seeing the demise of the monolithic mall and the evolution of that conversation. And oftentimes, that it's a land conservancy in a place where apartments can go in and or smaller commercial and basically neighborhood retail, scaling it down in a place where there's a market for more housing. And so that's what I see as one of the trends in reusing that real estate.
Great, thank you. And just to finish up, I'm sorry to everyone who we weren't able to get to your questions. There will be a follow-up survey sent out to each of the participants. If you guys could take that, that would be great for the future. And just to finish up, thank you everyone who attended. Have a great day.